Hello and welcome to Shaping African Conversations, and I'm so excited about today's show. We're going to be talking about relationships and how basically the pandemic has changed your relationships. And I have with me an amazing lineup of guests. I have Diane Masinde, who is a relationship coach, and of course, you all know Diane from Real Talk Decoded on Switch TV. Diane, welcome to Shaping African Conversations.
Thank you so much, Tamima. It's good to be here.
Okay, I also have with me Waithaka Gaituma, who is the CEO of Centonomy. Waithaka, karibu kwenye Shaping African Conversations.
Wicheke and Duarte.
I'm telling you. So this is an amazing opportunity, and thank you so much for having me here. Gatumia, Tamima. How many times we shall have to get it
Yvonne.
Right?
Yeah, you know. Anyway, moving on. We also have with us Gadoni. So Gadoni is a counselor at the Chiromo Medical Center. Gadoni, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here, Tamima. I'm a clinical psychologist.
So there you've had it. Okay, guys. So let's kick off the show today. And remember, we're talking about COVID-19 and changing relationships. And looking at the lineup I have, we're going to be focusing on your finances. We're going to be focusing on your relationships, whether it's a love relationship, whether you're parenting, your friendships, your family relationships. And now Gadoni is going to sum it all up for us from a mental wellness perspective. So let me start with you, Diane. Because in the context of relationships, COVID has come with both negatives and some positives for some people. But I kind of feel like in the last couple of months, we've seen a lot of relationships sort of like fail, and we've seen an increase in gender-based violence. And just recently now we are seeing in the news all the statistics around the increase in the number of teenage pregnancies in the country. So in your opinion, COVID and relationships, tell me.
Yeah. COVID-19 is a wake-up call. Every single relationship has moments where we call wake-up calls. So COVID-19 is one of them, where you have to face the reality of how you've been managing the relationship in your life. So right now, we are seeing couples who've just discovered, oh my goodness, I have become a stranger to my spouse. I have become a stranger to my children. And there's a lot of frustration because people are not preparing for this. And COVID-19 is one of those things that has taken away our control. We used to think that we have control, and now here's a situation where there's uncertainty, where sometimes the bills have to be paid, where sometimes we realize that, I've not been investing emotionally with my spouse or with my children, and then there you go. Something has happened where you're forced to interact with this person that you have neglected for such a long time. Because a lot of us, we were focusing just on work, chasing that money. Now you're at home 24/7, Monday to Sunday. Some of us have got no escape, where, your friends are also in their house, so you are also in your house, and there you are with a stranger. What do you do? So with that frustration, some people don't know how to handle it. They become violent, they become insulting. There's a lot of abuse going on, emotional abuse, physical abuse, financial abuse, where you're withholding money just because you want to pass a message to your spouse or you are uncertain. So there's a lot of that has been happening because of the lack of investing pre-COVID-19. So if you've not been investing in your relationships before COVID-19, now you have to face the hard. And
so
I just want to tell people,
our bad habits are catching up with us, in a nutshell. And COVID has now provided a situation whereby you have to confront whatever issues, whatever weaknesses are, and if you don't confront them accordingly and actually do the work, that's why you're seeing now a lot of all these negative sort of like stories about relationships, about violence, about pregnancies.
Yes, exactly. So if you haven't been learning how to relate, how to talk to your children and mentor them, how to relate with your spouse when things get thick, so you're going to hit rock bottom. And some of us, you don't know how to handle a difficult situation. That's why I like the fact that some people are reaching out for counseling. Some people are reaching out to Zoom meetings, to webinars like even this one, how they can learn how to better cope in this particular situation.
Now, Waithaka, we cannot talk about COVID without addressing the issue of the changing relationship with money. I feel like that expression ya pata potea, watu wengi sana wanasema pesa imepotea. So in the context of how you're able to plan for your finances, obviously this has come with a lot of changes, and some of these changes are overnight for some people, unfortunately, because we've seen layoffs, we've seen our businesses are now suffering because the income that they were generating is no longer what it was. We've seen entire industries actually being flattened overnight. So what do we have to hold near and dear when it comes to our changing relationship with our finances?
Well, Tamima, I think I'm like a broken record on your shows usually when you call me, because I keep talking about the same issues, but it's because the fundamentals of wealth creation, the fundamentals of money, they don't change. So we are looking at how do we manage what we have. So first of all, we are not all in the same boat. I think you've heard that before. You've heard people saying that the best one that I've heard so far is that we're in the same storm, we're not in the same boat. There are some who are weathering this storm a lot better, and in fact are even benefiting from this storm. Right now, we're using a platform called Zoom, which has quadrupled, I think, right now in valuation as a company. The owner now is one of, the wealthiest people in this world.
He's in the billionaires club.
He was ready to take advantage.
Yeah.
And so for us, there are those who are actually making a lot right now, and there are those. Because remember, even our tax rates have changed. So if you're earning the same amount that you're earning before, you are actually getting an extra few thousand shillings in your pocket. For those, it's about how do we take advantage of this situation? And I always talk about it. In every crisis, there's an opportunity.
Absolutely.
But there are also those of us who are struggling. And for us in that space where there's no money, there's no income, how do we manage what we have? It is about understanding where our money goes and ensuring we're in control of it.
Okay, so we're gonna come to that later on, Waithaka, where you'll actually give us like a step-by-step breakdown. I want to rope in Gathoni because we're talking about changing relationship. And I think for Gathoni, from a mental health point of view, over the last couple of weeks, even I can attest personally, life has changed, and life has changed drastically. Just when you think you have a handle on things, something changes. So I'm looking at the last couple of weeks in my life as a period of huge transitions, financially, professionally, on a personal level. So then how does the average person wrap their head around the fact that, oh my God, it's like the floor is spinning. Things are constantly changing. There's really no stability right now.
Thank you, Tamima, for that. I have to keep saying that we need to be in a space where we have to look at this as our new normal, and we are never going to get to a point where we will go back to how things were. But the best thing about this place where we are in today is that it has been a time of reflection, and somehow in some cases some relationships have been able to evolve, partners have gotten to learn and understand each other, parents have begun to actually spend more time with their children and even understand what goes on within the kids' school system. So in one way, it's actually a good thing. On the other part, there's obviously the cabin fever. So a lot of personality clashes have come into play. And to wrap your head around this is to accept that this is the new reality. And if this is the new reality, so how do we move forward? Having all these things in mind, there's the pandemic, things have changed, there are insecurities where work is concerned, our mental health is at risk. What is it that we need to do to ensure that we still remain both physically and mentally healthy? Yeah, so acceptance is really important at this point.
Okay, thank you for that, Gathoni. Now remember that wherever you're streaming us from, I have here Karanja Jr., who is streaming from Githurai, George Mora, you're watching from Nairobi, Wishmaster from Finlay is in Kericho, Linda Rotich, who is a member. I see you, Linda, saying, hey, Tamima and team, favorite day as always, tuning in from Nyandarua. Now, if you have any questions, because I have an amazing lineup of people today, if you have any questions about your relationship, kama boyfriend anakusumbua, kama bwana anakusumbua, please feel free to ask your your question. Diane is here. We'll get into it. If you have any questions about money and your finances, Waithaka, as you've had, CEO of Centonomy. So this is free consultation. Yani how to me we invoice. So feel free, go in the comment section, drop your questions. Let me know where you're streaming us from, and of course, what your specific question is. And so right now, I want us to focus on relationships. So Diane, in the context of relationships right now, Gadoni has alluded to it because she's saying we have sort of like this pressure cooker situation whereby we are now living in a time where people are forced to be very close to each other. Either everyone is working from home, the kids are schooling from home because there's literally no school. But I want us to start with love relationships because it's not all bleak. We have some people who can actually attest that this period has actually strengthened their relationships, but at the same time, it's not the same case for everyone. So then what advice do you give to couples especially around how can you take this time instead of creating animosity, instead of sowing, negative emotions, taking this time to actually rediscover each other and probably build a stronger relationship?
Yeah, Tamima, the interesting thing is that I've been having a lot of interest for counseling and for therapy this past few days. People are really, really looking for help. And some of them either by call or coming actually for a physical meeting. And that's a good thing. That's a good show. I want to tell couples that this is a season. It's just a season. Use this season well. Own this season. I like the name of this particular show, Shaping African Conversation. So shape the conversations in your relationship or in your marriage. Shaping means that you're deliberate. You're not afraid to have this hard conversation. So what do we do and how do we get along? How do we grow together? Because it is important to realize that this thing is going to end. Once this COVID-19 ends, how are you two going to be? Will you be a stronger couple? Will you use this season, this bump to become a stronger couple? Or will this be the thing that tears your family apart? Another thing I want to remind people, remember why you got married. Remember why you got into that relationship. Remember why you started this family. If you go back to the original intent, you'll be able to pull through this. And I want to say there are people like myself and many others who are willing to work with you during this difficult situation. So don't suffer alone. Don't die alone. Do not commit suicide. Do not attempt suicide. Do not harm your partner. Do not harm your children. Do not walk alone.
And thank you for that, Dan. And probably Waithaka, when you're talking about the family and love relationships, you cannot dismiss the importance of finances because, for a lot of relationship, the financial pillar is very important. So how then can couples navigate that? How do you effectively communicate? Maybe I'm earning less than what I was earning before. I no longer have a job. We now have to look at the household budget. When it comes to the kids, we now have to look at what is a want versus what is a need. Waithaka?
First of all, thank you. You've done it. You've said everything that I would have said, Tamima. You seem to have been listening every time I've come, which is great. The thing is this, do it. And I'm sure Diane and others in the panel will say it. There's knowledge and then there's action. And I think the biggest problem that we have is that we have the knowledge, but we often don't take the action. And that's what we need to start thinking about. How do we take that action? It's by actually having a meeting. Just like at your workplace, you have what is called a budget meeting. Mm-hmm. Have one in your house. If there's major shifts at your office place, what usually happens if there's a shift in terms of income, like we had a crisis meeting at Centonomy because our business was essentially shut down when the government said no more classes. So we had to have a crisis meeting and said, what is it we're going to do? So if you are in a crisis where you are, have a meeting, sit down and say, the income has been reduced by this amount. This is what we were earning before. This is what we're earning now. How do we then adjust? That is what the budgeting process is like. Everyone knows what a budget looks like. But for some reason, we don't seem to want to apply the techniques that we use every day in our office, in our home, because it is exactly the same technique. The only difference is the environment. Yes. Now, emotions. Maybe the language that you're going to use, it's not going to be, orders, but rather a discussion. But I think that kind of discussion is what usually would work best. Have the actual budgeting discussion. That is where the difference is, Tamima. And I hope everyone who's listening is paying attention. It's not about knowing I need to budget. No, it's actually doing it. So have that discussion, have a meeting, and openness really makes a huge difference. This is not the time to hide and try and to borrow to fix, the gaps that have been found. No, this is the time to be honest and say, I am at 25% of my salary. I am at 0. I have been fired, or I've been put on, leave. Have that discussion, and then now you can begin to figure out, what do we do next?
Okay, so joining us right now, we have Tomisin all the way from Nigeria. Tomisin, how are you?
Hello.
How are you?
Habari ya jioni.
Mzuri tena sana. Karibu dada.
How are you today?
I'm good. And yourself?
Very well. And good to have you. I've been listening to the conversation right before I came on.
Okay, so we're talking about changing COVID-19 and changing relationships. So we're talking about love relationships, your relationship with your money, and also your relationship with yourself. So how is this playing out in Nigeria?
All right, let's talk about Nigerian relationships. Unfortunately, in recent times, we've seen a rise in violence against women. And that, for me, is all coming from the relationship angle. In the last couple of weeks, we've had very serious challenges. A lot of women were attacked, some killed, raped and murdered. And we had some who were, now these are women who, even if they were in relationships, we're not even sure who the killers are. The police are still investigating. There was also the rise in abuse of kids, underage children, 11, 12, and thereabouts. It's been very appalling, as it were. And the National Human Rights Commission and everybody are taking, to the streets to protest against whatever this is. The governor's wives and all of that across the country, the 36 states of the Federation, have also done the same. Now, when it comes to marriage relationship, as it were, there has also been a little bit of increase in violence, beatings here and there from time to time. There was one that chopped off the mouth, a man chopped off the mouth of his wife, chopped off the lip, the upper lip of the wife, just during the COVID-19 saga as well. So I think it's been very testing on relationships around here. And we've been trying as much as possible as a people to just educate them on most of the television programs you see. We've been talking about it. We've been educating people. And then we've been giving the victims a voice. Because ultimately, when you are down, and you don't have anybody to talk to, your situation tends to result into maybe depression or suicide or something. And we really want to put an end to suicide. Of course, good news, we've not had any case of suicide since the COVID-19 pandemic got here. But it's been a testing and a very trying time for most relationships. Those who have it good have had it better. And those who didn't have it good, but didn't know they didn't have it good, are obviously experiencing a very, very difficult time. But ultimately, I think we're just coping. It's been a coping thing. So I'd like to ask Gatoni right here, is it a psychological effect? Is it that COVID-19 has a psychological effect on people? And that's why there's been a rise in underage rape, underage assault, sexual molestation? Is it a psychological thing that is coming from the lockdown and, of course, the COVID-19, the helplessness that comes with COVID-19 itself?
Thank you, Tamima, for that. So usually how the human mind works, like when you feel under pressure, you get to a level of saturation and then you kind of blow up. But I wouldn't want to say that it's the COVID-19 that is directly causing people to either rape or children or molest kids, because that's also an issue of a character defect and an issue of value. However, the pressure that has come with this pandemic what it has done is that it has exposed a lot of the things that have been happening within the community level, within the society, and even the moral decay. Even when we look at our own country, not just Nigeria, the other day we had statistics, the number of underage pregnancies, it's really alarming. You know, in Nairobi only it's at 11,000. In Machakos it's at 4,000. So
you can imagine.
Yeah, this is happening all rounded, but that goes to tell you the state of those individuals' mental health, number one. And secondly, that also goes to tell you the number of negative coping mechanisms that people are adopting to deal with the kind of pressure that they are experiencing within their surrounding. And just to reiterate what Diane said, we shouldn't be afraid, because there is a lot of stigma around mental health. We should not be afraid to seek help. We should not be afraid to also take our children to seek help should we start seeing some of these things happening. As well, we should also not be afraid to hold people accountable. It's our responsibility as well, not just the government, but as individuals, to ensure that when these things are happening within our family setup, within the neighbors, that we hold people accountable for what they are doing.
Okay, thank you for that, Gadoni. Now, remember, we are streaming live on the Switch TV Facebook page, and as always, love to know who is watching us. So we have here Naksh Lungatso from all the way from Bumet. I see you. Katrina Josephine from Tasia. I see you. Charity Mbithe from Wayakiwe. Mabel from K South. Karanja from Gedurai. Wishmaster from this is all the way from Kericho. And George Morara from Nairobi. So again, thank you guys for just jumping on this live with us right now. Remember, if you have any questions to do with any changing relationship in your life, whether it's the relationship with your money, relationship with your loved ones, relationship with your parents, just feel free to ask the question. And so right now, back to you, Diane, before we wind up on the issue of relationships, because I feel that we live in a society where we are not really taught how to deal with conflict. And the reality is...
with your loved ones, relationship.
And the reality is that when people, you've heard the expression, familiarity breeds contempt. And now we are seeing that people are working probably very closely right now, because a lot of businesses are in turmoil. So there's a lot of stress in relationships as well. Couples are now spending more time together. So what would be your advice in terms of now how to handle conflict when it crops up? Because I kind of feel that's where a lot of people get it wrong, that conflict must come up, but the issue is how do you resolve it?
Yeah, very, very, very important, because you go to school to be trained to be a lawyer, you go to school to be trained to be a doctor, to be an auditor, all these things. But where do you go to be trained on how to be a spouse, how to be a parent? I love the fact that in today's society, we've got so many platforms right now that you can plug in and learn how to be a better spouse, how to be a better child. So that's number one. Get plugged into these platforms that actually help you to build. That's number one. Number two, be able to ask your spouse, how do you want me? How do you want me to best love? Have this conversation so that you're not assuming. Number three, don't be afraid of conflict. Disagreements are bound to be there in any relationship. Husband-wife relationships, conflicts are bound to be there. The thing is, how do you manage them? And this is the best time for you to actually learn how to handle conflicts. So conflict management. When you're angry, cool down fast. Do not say something that's going to offend your spouse. On the issue of money, some of us have realized that you had a spouse who used to tell you, we need to save, but you're not listening to your spouse. If you are telling your spouse you need to save, but they're not listening to you, now is not the time to tell your spouse, I told you so. No, now is the time to be like, you know what, as a team, let's come together and see how we can find a solution towards this. This is not the time for I told you so, I told you so. This is also not the time to critique the parenting skills of your spouse. You're doing like this, you're not supposed. This is the time to have a conversation as parents. How can we as a tag team raise these children well? The thing about a lot of us is that we are so dependent on people telling us what to do with our time. At the workplace, your boss is telling you what to do with your time. At home, where it's all up to you, you don't know how to manage your time. So time management is crucial. Don't just spend time with the children, spend quality time with the children. Don't just spend time with your spouse, spend quality time with your spouse. Time to go on a date. On a date, just spend time.
And really, just to echo what Dan is saying, that especially in love relationships, there is really no winner, because it should be the both of you against the problem. But when you start looking at it from a point where, you know what, as you're saying, I'm right, you're wrong, critiquing, it doesn't really serve anyone. Now, I want to take a couple of questions here. We have on the relationship angle, and I'm going to be throwing this to you, Diane. So someone here is asking, this is James who's asking, why are more families breaking up during this period than any other period before?
Very, very important question. Foundations are weak. A lot of us, we have weak foundational relationships. Why you do not take time to build the right foundation. And once the foundation is weak, whenever a storm comes, then it's bound to shake. But all is not lost. If your foundation was weak, this is the time right now to be like, oh my goodness, we had a crack, we were burying things under the rug, we need to now address this thing. Some people are having years and years and years of issues. Right now, they're cropping up. Zinatoka saizi. So if they're cropping up right now, it's the time to have this conversation and be like, you know what? I don't like what it is that is happening. I don't like the way you treat me. I don't like this. You are entitled to voice out your frustration, but how to respond to it is also your decision. So respond as a couple, but also realizing what Gadoni said, we've got different temperaments. Some people are control freaks. They are control freaks. So right now they want to control you, they want to control the situation. And COVID-19 has made us to lose that control. So in case you're feeling powerless, remember, it is okay sometimes to be powerless. It is okay sometimes not to be okay. So just tell your spouse, you know what? I am frustrated. I am mad. I am scared. Tell your spouse these things. Communicate your feelings. Don't hide them up. Don't bottle things up. If you bottle things up, they're going to explode. So if your foundation is weak, this is the best, perfect time to work on your foundation.
Okay, so there you've had it. It's definitely okay not to be okay. And remember, if you feel that you need, any form of support, please feel free to call 1199. That's the Kenya Red Cross helpline. There is a trained professional counselor on the other end of the line, someone who's ready to give you an ear to whatever issue it is that you're going through, hear you out, walk you through it, and actually give you some very solid advice. And even in some instances, refer you to some actually more to refer you to actually get some professional help in case of psychosocial issues. Gadoni, you were saying something?
I was saying, one of the other reasons that a lot of, to answer the question, why are relationships breaking up now more, is because previously we were in a space where there was an escape. So you'd either bury yourself at work, or you would go to the bar in the evening, or even the church, or go and hang out with your friends. But now we're in a space where there's no escape. So if there are issues and we previously did not have any way to deal with the conflicts, we used to escape from them, then now we are stuck in the same place. And one of the things that I like to encourage couples to do is during the forming stage, and unfortunately, a lot of people don't go through the stages where they try, and like what Diane is saying, to form a foundation, is to have rules of engagement. During a fight, there must be an agreement in regards to how are we going to engage in a fight, because obviously issues are going to happen in a relationship. There are words we should not use. Which words are those? There are statements we should not use. What statements are those? If we deal with an issue, we are going to agree that we are not sleeping until this issue is resolved. And once this issue is resolved, then we agree that we are not going to repeat this issue and kind of be in a ruminating space where when one problem happens, you remember the other problem and the other problem, and now it just becomes a vicious cycle. And another important thing is about compromise, because people look at compromise as maybe one is losing and one is winning. And I like to look at it as compromise is coming up with a third choice. You're right as my partner, and I'm right. Of course, my feelings and my opinions are right. Your feelings and your opinions are right based on our experiences and everything. But then where do we go from that? We need choice C, a third opinion that is going to suit both of us, and we are choosing that this is what we are going to take up. Yeah.
Okay, and it's just important to point out that sometimes even in the midst of conflict, you really don't have to address it then. Sometimes it's okay to walk away and actually say, let's sleep on it. Maybe when we wake up in the morning, you'll be less angry, you'll be a bit more sober, so you're able then to address whatever issue it is that's facing you. And now maybe just to throw this to Tommy. Sorry about that. Yeah,
Yes.
so Tommy, just take it from me. I think I'm joking. Yes.
All right.
My throat is
All
a
right,
bit dry.
Shamima. I can just imagine. I can imagine. Now, I would like to also ask questions like, money is a deal breaker for a lot of people. Now,
Yeah.
most people do not even know how, to handle not having money, because now you already have a situation where money has been a problem in the family. Because that's, if you trace most of the relationship with problems now, that's exactly what has always happened. Couples who were not talking before, like Gatoni said, people who had an escape, work was an escape, church, partying, going with friends was always an escape. And now they are in their own space and they have to communicate. Okay. Now, money coming into that mix makes it really, really tough on a lot of couples. Money is the root problem, of some of the separations that you're looking at during COVID-19. And we have a money man in the studio. Despite the fact that, we're not making as much money as we used to. Is it possible for a relationship to survive without both parties putting money in the common purse, putting money down to run the family? Is it possible for such a family, for such a relationship to thrive?
Question. Waithaka?
Well, I believe so. I honestly believe you can be able to thrive. And what's quite revealing in this moment is that many times we think that money is the problem, but often money is just the linchpin. It is the one that sets off the relationship.
Money is the symptom of the deeper problem.
Exactly. Because when you think about it, Tamima, I've been training in personal finance for years now. And I've seen people who have struggled with money in terms of that maybe they're dealing with poverty and they fight. I've dealt with middle income and they fight. I've dealt with extremely wealthy people and they still fight.
And they still fight.
Yes. So money is not the actual issue. It is the inability to deal with one another and to have honest conversations with one another about that money. And that's what we're trying to advocate for now, because we run a class at St. Autonomy about money and relationships. And there are two key words that come out. I hope you'll hear these two words: clarity and openness. If there is no clarity, there will be conflict. And clarity and openness come together. Clarity means there's nothing hidden. There's no hidden agenda, because that's something that often happens. You want to present a certain front to your family that we are doing well. That is not giving them clarity. Clarity is, this is how much I earn and this is our home budget. But in an African setting, often men don't want to fully admit how much they make. And because of that, we find that also women don't want to fully admit where they put their money.
And
but does that affect the relationship?
Correct. There is a toxic environment of lying.
So
we must begin to be open about what we have and clear. Yes, Tamima,
I want to do a poll right here, just literally, because we're talking about openness and clarity. And because we're trying to be as real as possible. Let me just do a spot check for everyone who's inside this panel right now. Let me start with you, Diane. So Diane, ask Diane.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you declare how much you earn to your spouse? Are you then able to go through that process that Waithaka is talking about openness and clarity and budgeting together? Do you actively do that?
Yes, I do that, and so does my wife. She knows every single time whenever I make some sales, I'm like, darling, I've got this session, I've got this meeting, I've got this money checking in, I've got this money waiting to take into the bank account. So she knows, and I also know. Even when the tax in the UK ends up sending her some more cash, I'm like, I know what actually is happening. I just want to also add that there's a difference between principles and pattern. Principles is openness, transparency, and teamwork. Pattern is you can have two different bank accounts, but you still work. Pattern is we can have the same bank account and it still work. Pattern is you can have your bank account, my bank account, and then a joint bank account and it still works. But principles are the same, but patterns differ from couples to couples.
I'm curious, for anyone who's streaming with us here live, do you tell your significant other how much you earn, ladies? Yeah, I want to find out from you. Let me find out from you, Tommy. Tommy, is this a discussion that has been had in your household? That this is how much I earn?
I like the fact that you're asking me this question first. Okay, so I like the way that Diane handled it. For me, it's a principle thing. You do things together, money things together, but we don't disclose in full. So basically, I hand some money. Yes, we do that. But the fact that, this is how much I saved, this is how much I didn't save. No, we don't do that. But when it comes to projects, we handle that and we say, okay, we're going to do this. Or, okay, let's do this together. So what are we going to do? What are you dropping? What am I dropping? How do we make this work? Because based on principle, we have some set guidelines that we must do together. Some things that we must do together. But when it comes to saying, I hand this. Personally, I do not think it is necessary for me. I'm not a questioning kind of person. I don't ask questions. So because I don't ask such questions, I feel offended sometimes if you insist that I must answer such questions. And that has worked for me for as long as I've been married. We both understand that is the principle and we're working with it. But for me, it doesn't work for everybody. I mean, some people must keep a joint account. They hand salaries into the same one. One person spends and the other is the keeper of the money. Whatever works for you. But ultimately, I just feel that money shouldn't be the reason, as it were, why your relationship is not working. I think there are other underlying factors. It means that the two of you are actually not together. Money is just like our man here said.
Correct.
Money is that thing that is pushing out the real fundamental problems, that you have.
Wait, now that you're saying correct, before you respond, you have to tell us, you in your life.
Waithaka wants to respond. Let him do that.
Tell us, how do you run your relationship?
About our home.
Yes.
Tamima, it is open completely. In fact, she's my sweetheart is my chief financial officer in the house. I report to her.
That means she knows how to spend money more than you do.
She does. More control and order. But exactly. Here's the thing. When we talk about openness and clarity, the definition of how that relationship works is up to you as a couple. And that is what is important. If you understand that within our relationship, this is how we will function, and it's the same with all the other discussions that we've been having so far. Money is just one of those areas. If there's clarity, there was, let me tell you a short story, Tamima. There was a gentleman in our class. He stood up and he told me, young man, and when an older gentleman in Africa tells you, young man, you sit down. So I sat down. And this gentleman, he said, Waithaka, in our house, I am the one who pays for the rent and for the children's school fees, no matter what. Even when I lost my job, it was my responsibility to come hell or high water to do that. Because in their home, that was the standard and everybody was clear about it. Now, where there comes a problem is that where there's that lack of clarity, you've never discussed it, you've never had an agreement. So I'm there watching you spending money. I'm stressed, I'm under pressure. And I'm like, where's this money coming from? Can't you see that I'm stressed? Can't you help out? Can't you step out? I'm thinking these things, but I'm not discussing them. That is where this conflict begins to come up, because there's a sense of a feeling that I'm being undermined. There's something being hidden from me. There's something that I'm not being involved in. And that has nothing to do with the money. It has everything to do with the nature of our relationship. So when I say open and clarity, I don't mean that the only way is to have a joint account or the like, but it is that you understand this is how our relationship works.
Okay, let's hear from Gathoni. Gathoni, tell us, which principles and patterns do you implement?
I genuinely feel like I'm really in a totally different world here. Maybe I need a centonomy class.
Hey, come.
People do not disclose what they earn. Like, I kind of have an idea what he earns, and I know what I earn, and we both know the bills that we take care of. And that has been working perfectly. And I'm in a place where I kind of feel like if I keep on insisting, like, this paycheck, is this all you earn or there's some more money? I feel like that is kind of pushing it a little bit too much. But I come from a family setup where my parents are very, very open people. And basically my mom runs the whole house. If you want to go to school or if you want to travel and my mom says no, it's a no, yet it's my dad who works. She's the financier of that house.
The CFO.
But I'm in a generation where we kind of feel, and a lot of people around me, and especially women, it's like you have like an exit plan at the back of your mind.
Thank you.
But let's be honest, isn't that what we are taught as African women? That in as much as you tell him,
mentality.
yeah, in as much as you tell him you earn this much, there's that side hustle which you keep quiet. You don't tell anybody about it.
That secret account. Secret.
Yes.
No, but really, it's an African woman's mentality because we tend to be the rescuer when things go sour.
And
so you must have something to fall back on.
And and again,
and that's why women are better money managers.
Absolutely.
That actually comes from our grandparents, because my grandmother says, quote unquote, meaning that children belong to the mother. So you better have like a solid plan should anything happen.
Go wrong.
Tamima, can a man speak?
Please.
You don't.
A man can speak.
A man needs to speak now.
Speak.
But Waithaka, I hear you about the clarity. I really hear you, and I really like what you've talked about, because I have never really thought about, should it come to a point where I have zero or he has zero, how are we even going to have that kind of a conversation?
Because you'll not even know.
I will not even know, because he might not be close to me. He will kind of continue hustling because he has this role that he has to keep playing. So,
Good.
Yeah.
Mwanaume ongee, Waithaka.
Let me speak.
Yes.
Let me explain. When it comes to, and this is something that we must begin to understand. In as much as, yes, in African culture, we talk about exactly what you talk about. Women will want to protect their children, everything. I agree, no problem. However, we must begin to understand that in your lifetime, your partner is your husband, is your wife. Your children will leave you. And right now, I am dealing with over and over again, because we do retirement classes. I am dealing with very significant financial issues, and they only come out in retirement. I love, Gadoni, that you are so open, and thank you for being open as you were, to say that, we are kind of good at this moment. But the real issues come up when things go wrong. You see, if you're earning money, he's able to cover. If he's earning money, he's able to cover his responsibility. When things go wrong is when those questions now start being asked. And it is always an extremely difficult time to answer questions when you're under pressure. When now I have been exposed, that is the time that now you're coming to ask, so what are you going to do about this payment that was due? Now, imagine having a financial discussion like that under pressure of COVID. Now you are in the same house. Now there's no money. Now you're spending more because the children are home and eating you out of, everything that is there. I don't know how many of parents are in the house like me who are surprised at how much children eat.
Yes.
And now, so the worst time to have a difficult discussion is when you're under pressure.
Absolutely.
And that's what we are trying to avoid. So when I'm speaking like this, I'm just talking about this from this perspective. Let us be clear before the storm hits. Diane, please add. We need to hear male voice.
Thank you so much, my brother. 3 things. Number 1, there's a difference between being accountable and being answerable. Being answerable is what you are to your boss. Being accountable is what you are to your partner, your spouse.
Amen.
Together in this. You don't need to ask me. I am telling you this information voluntarily because we are together in this. You don't have to probe me. You don't have to check. You don't have to look for my statements. I'm going to tell you because we are accountable. If anything happens to you, it happens to me. Whatever happens to me, happens to you. That's number one. Number two, as a relationship coach, most of the times I've realized that when people start to hide their money, how much they're earning, it is because of trust issues. Clarity blown up in a bigger way. There's no clarity of our future together. I'm in a shaky situation. You're mistreating me. We are not well together. But couples who have a very, very good, warm relationships, they tend, not all of them, but most of them tend to be able to work together in terms of being accountable and not have, I've got another side account over there. Number three, unfortunately, this is something that we're seeing. When you die, and then your spouse has got no idea about your earnings, about your money, your wealth, your property. Then your spouse is over there going to court processes, trying to secure something that was rightfully theirs and rightfully your children, but because of your secrecy, they never knew. You kept it out of them. So who's at a loss? It is your family. Look, you're sleeping on the same bed, you're sharing the same children, you're living in the same house. Surely you can be accountable. Surely you can learn how to be accountable, and it's going to work well as a team. When I'm down, please lift me up. When you're down, I will lift you up. When you win, I win. When I win, we win.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Dan. And just to read some comments from the guys who are watching us live. Charity Mbithe Muteti saying, "This your money is ours, mine is alone," and she's just laughing because most women actually come into relationships with that mentality. Pesa yako yetu, pesa yangu ni yangu. And then I'd want you to talk a bit more on that. Someone else here also asking, what advice would you give to people who are in a relationship that is long distance, and one person feels like the other one is not doing enough to keep the connection? That goes to you, Diane. Then another question here, another person asking, in a marriage setup, what do you do when you feel like your spouse is now behaving awkwardly, they're withdrawn? When you ask them a question, they throw a tantrum. And how do you handle such treatment, considering that now we're in a situation where we are constantly around each other? Thank you. So yeah, some very good feedback. Here, Charity also saying, the pandemic has had me getting closer to my family, more video calls, more interactions. So that's positive. So Diana, I want you to take those two questions.
Yes, thank you so much for that positive statement, dear viewer. Now to the three questions. Number one, when it comes to these things of you getting into the place whereby you are, how can I phrase it? You feel like you need to communicate better, and so you need to communicate better to your spouse. You need to communicate better to your spouse. Repeat for me kindly the first question, Tanima.
So the first question that they were asking was, let me just get that again. My money, our money for women. Yes. That most women come into relationships with the mindset that my money is my money, but his money is our money.
Yes.
Exactly.
Thank you very much, Tanima. Now I want to ask ladies, the ladies who actually tend to say that, why do you go to work? Why do you go to work? Why are you working so hard? Why are you getting that salary? Why are you saving up that money? Is it so that you can make your hair? Is it so that you can do your nails? Is it so that you do it for your family? You do it for your family. So that notion of my money is my money and his money is our money, you need to remember you go to work as a woman because you are supposed to be also contributing. And let me tell you this as a woman, there is joy when you look at your children eating food that you bought, eating chapati that you actually went and you bought with your hard-earned money, you went ahead and sweat and all that kind of stuff. So that is very, very important. So remember as a woman, why do you go to work? Why are you earning that money? It is for your family. The same reason why your husband is going to work. Now to the second question, which is about long distance. Yes, even during this COVID-19 situation, there have been a lot of people who've been locked up. Maybe your partner is working outside of Nairobi metropolitan place and then, they cannot even come. What do you do? What do you do? Let me tell you this, long distance relationships, they work. They work, but it is important to realize that there are fundamental principles you need to have. Number one, frequent communication. Number two, accountability and transparency. I am here, this is what it is that I'm doing, what not. And number three, working out a plan where you can actually bridge the gap sooner and as fast as you can. You know what? I can't wait for this COVID-19 to end so I can go and do it. Now that is a plan. So you're waiting for the borders to be lifted so we can actually come. So that's a good thing. But you can have these conversations. If you have a child, if you have children, video call them. Get to have a conversation with them. Get to actually laugh with them. Get to have a wonderful time with your partner. Make memories. And to the third question, where the viewer was asking about silent treatment, you have a spouse who's indifferent, a spouse amekunyamazia, so they're not speaking. What do you do? Number one, ask yourself, have I contributed to them shouting out? Maybe your spouse is shouting out because of something you said. So reflect. If there's something that you say that was off, that was hurtful, apologize. Apologize. Learn to apologize. Number two, realize that people are different. People are different. Maybe you open up easily, maybe he or she doesn't. And so remember that. And then number three, ask, first of all, light questions, light conversations. Have light conversations full of humor, icebreakers. You know what? Compliment your guy, compliment your lady. Feel like, hey man, that chapati was really, really tasty. That you get to make them comfortable. Then now you bring in the hard questions. Don't just go in thick and fast. Relax. Make the person feel comfortable with the light conversations as you go into deeper conversations. And when you start to have deeper conversations, make sure you have adequate time to talk. Some of us, we start very heavy conversations and there's no time. So you start a heavy conversation and then it ends up ugly. Make sure there's sufficient time. And if you're a man, don't run away from that conversation. When you hear your woman saying, we need to talk, please. Sometimes it's not a bad thing. Get to talk. Get to talk. It's not a threat. Relax, my brother. Relax. Talk to her.
Absolutely. We need to talk.
But I really have, Tamima,
Yes.
I need to take Diane up on something Diane just said.
Uh-huh.
Diane, at the beginning of your answer, you were talking about our money is our money, your money is our money, and my money is my money.
Uh-huh.
But I think there wasn't a balance there, because as much as you're saying that women should, their work, what are you working for? Why are you earning the money in the first place? I think you should also talk to the men and say things like, it is your responsibility to take care of your family. That's what it means to be the head.
Exactly.
That's to be your balance.
It is very, very important.
See, when you say that it should be your money is our money and my money is our money, what you end up finding is the fact that you have more men going towards being lax at their responsibility. So I particularly like Gatoni's style, because then you have the chunk of the responsibility being on one side. So peradventure, when Wataka was saying, when there is no money on one side, so what happens? He hustles. He hustles to make sure the money is available, because he knows he won't sit on his horse and say, after all, we had a conversation. My wife is comfortable. She earns enough to sustain us for a while. I can still, lax. I can still, move around and find things, gradually. He knows that he has responsibility. So it's the ground running, which will also work to the psyche of the man and make sure that he doesn't lose value. His ego is not trampled upon by nobody but himself anyway, and other issues. So it should be, yes, our money is your money is our money, my money is our money. But the place of the man is to be the provider. The wife is your support. So you take the chunk of the responsibility as much as your wife is supporting you. And you must be willing to take the chunk, even if she earns double of what you earn.
Okay,
Thank you
with
very much for
that,
that.
let me throw that to you. Some very strong sentiments there from Tommy.
My answer was not an excuse for men not to play their role. Remember what I said at the end of my answer? Both of you, both the husband and the wife, they're working for the family. So this is to the men. Just because your wife, first of all, earns more than you, it doesn't mean that you're a lesser man at home. You're still the head. Her family is still called by your name. You still need to man up, king up. I actually love the word king up more than manning up. King up. You're the king of that particular home. So protect your kingdom, nourish your kingdom, provide for your kingdom. Because your wife will not help you where you're not going. So where are you going? And then wives, please help your king. That's what queens do.
So here's
Thank
the
you so
thing,
much for
Tamima,
that.
because you brought my name into this.
Yes.
Tamima, what Diane and Tomisena are assuming is that we share our cultural and our sociological background. We share our thought that the man is the king or the provider. And those are the assumptions that I'm challenging, because there are relationships around the world that function differently.
The woman
we're
works,
assuming that
the man raises the children. We've seen those in other cultures. And
Correct.
yeah.
And I'm not trying to advocate for them. What I'm trying to say is in relationships and where conflict comes up is when there is an assumption that my way of thinking, that you should be the provider, you should be the man in the house. The wife is thinking that, he's thinking maybe we're in a more progressive relationship, or it's the other way around, where the man is thinking, I'm the king, I'm the decider, I'm the one who's going to be able to do this. Why aren't you following this? And the woman is thinking, I'm trying to be more progressive. I'm being part of that provision in this house. So without an agreement, that is where the conflict comes up, Tamima. We must begin to address that issue, because if we come at it from the assumption from both sides that this is how it's going to be, then we get ourselves really surprised, and we're not really fighting over money. That now becomes the thing. You see, I'm an advocate for money. Yes. Is a good thing.
Now you're back to principle.
And it helps us in many relationships. Okay. But you need to get it right.
Okay, guys, so I'm saying our time is almost up. But basically what we are saying, there isn't really a one-fits-all sort of like formula that should be used. The most important thing is keep the channels of communication open. Be very candid and truthful to yourself about what matters to you. You had me earlier on asking all the panelists, how are they running their own personal lives? How do money matters impact their personal relationships? And as you've seen, it really does differ. Gadoni was able to share, Waithaka shared, Diane shared, Tommy also shared. So even for you in your own life, you have to remember that. Be very candid. What do you expect? Do you accept transparency? Do you accept, let him earn, my money is my money? But at the end of the day, it has to work for you, and the both of you have to make informed choices that actually serve your families. Well, obviously, I'm being told that the time we have is up. So guys, I just want to thank you so much. And I feel like we need to do this topic again now as volume 2, because there's so much to cover, clearly. And I love that everyone was actually very open and very candid, because the reality is these are the conversations that are happening in the homes. These are the conversations that are causing marriages to break, because people are not equipped with the skills, the language around how do I tell my husband, mshahara imekatwa hii side, you need to support me. How do I tell my wife, honey, we can no longer live as extravagantly as we used to. Kama ni kwenda salon, apana. Kama ni kutengeleza kucha, apana. Acha itulie for now. But remember, ultimately, we just want you guys to make positive choices in your life so that at least you can live happy and healthy lives. And as always, I love hearing from you. So if you have any questions and comments, drop them in the comment section. We're going to address them there. Diane, feel free to go in the comment section. Switch TV, answer the people there. Waithaka, go in the Switch TV comment section. Angalia swali yako, andika jibu pale. So again, thank you so much, wherever it is you streamed from, just to join us here today, every Tuesday at 5 o'clock. To all my panelists, thank you so much, Tommy. Thank you, Gadoni. Thank you, Waithaka. Thank you, Diane. Yes, until next week, this has been Shaping African Conversations. Enjoy your day. Watch Switch TV.